Procrastination is a common challenge, and even according to the medical world, they say procrastination can be a symptom of kind of several psychological, even neurological, and definitely behavioral conditions. With ADHD at the top, difficulty with task initiation and organization, the common traits there are distraction, time blindness, even, and anxiety around starting something. It said that depression fueled procrastination is just that low energy hopelessness where things feel pointless. And then generalized anxiety disorder. So you procrastinate because of a fear of doing something imperfectly. This fear leads you to avoidance. And this is commonly like overthinking, analysis paralysis, excessive worry, autism spectrum disorder. Procrastination in this context is seen as executive dysfunction. And then there's this whole list of where procrastination can be a behavior along the path to diagnosis: bipolar disorder, PTSD, executive function disorder itself. But procrastination isn't always a symptom. Most of the time, it's just a sign that you're clinging to an old identity or something familiar, and that you're not in this forward moving momentum. And sometimes you don't even know that you're procrastinating. And if you can identify an action as procrastination, you can call yourself out and you can get really real. You can reclaim your focus, you make aligned decisions, and you actually start moving forward again instead of just circling the same task or treading water. If you're in the same place you've been in for a while, yet inside you feel like you should be further, perhaps there may be a level of procrastination at play. And it might actually help to define procrastination here. And the definition I kind of landed on is any time consuming action or actions that feel productive, that feel safe, they even feel necessary, but are actually ways of avoiding something else that really needs to be done. So if you were able to name a particular activity that you do as an indication of clear procrastination, then you begin to better understand the moments where you may benefit from taking back control. And it becomes a choice you can shift consciously. And that's what consciousness simply is to be the most aware that you can be of the root causes of something and the multiple layers of a situation or effort. You stop wasting energy almost falsely being busy with something that could definitely be done at a different time. And then you start making real progress. And it's funny how you may procrastinate with an activity most of the time that can really be left till later. The irony of doing something now that should be left to another time versus leaving something to another time that you really should focus on now. The irony of that is hilarious. And I love that about the human experience. It's so funny the way it embodies an entire spectrum within itself is very dualistic. And the more open you are to the duality, then the easier everything really tends to get. But back to procrastination, in identifying procrastination behaviors, there's kind of a skill to it because there are actually some actions that seem like procrastination that you may tell yourself are procrastination, but they are not even procrastination at all, not a little bit. And the first one on that list is resting. You are not procrastinating when you genuinely need to take a break. And it's at rest that your body integrates the things that your mind has processed. Another example is prioritizing. So choosing to handle another task first because it's time sensitive. That's the key here. If there's a deadline attached to it, it doesn't mean that you're still avoiding that really important thing, avoiding a dream, avoiding a passion, avoiding moving towards your purpose. It doesn't mean you're avoiding something else. It can simply be strategic rather than evasive. But in every individual, there is one clear thing you do, one behavior, a certain activity, or a mindset that you fall into that is sheer procrastination. And when you identify this, you can interrupt the cycle. Whenever you find yourself doing that thing, that activity, falling into that space, you can kind of say, aha, I'm procrastinating. And then you get honest with yourself and you redirect your energy where it actually matters the most. And there are tons of systems for better, efficient, optimal existence. There's Eat the Frog, which is a system where you do the most difficult thing first. There's the Eisenhower matrix, where you kind of say, this, and this are urgent and important, therefore they go first. And this thing over here that I need to do, it's not urgent, it's not important. And you kind of just schedule and organize yourself with time as the leader. And these ideas give me this kind of image of a body functioning, because these things, time organization and doing the hardest thing first because you have the most energy, prioritizing, resting, they seem very physical. But the spiritual soul level procrastination, the thing that you default to when you are scared or nervous about doing the thing that you're putting off, it changes your efficiency on a day-to-day basis by 20%. And that's minimum, because I read some studies that mentioned up to 40%, but at least nearly a quarter of your efficiency is impacted by your ability to stay focused and not procrastinate. One of the studies I read, and I'll try and find it and link it below, said that improving your focus by monitoring your procrastination improves your efficiency to the tune of 8 weeks per year. And it went on to just explain how the time you save through efficient action, minimal procrastination and such, equates to 8 weeks a year. That's 8 weeks you get back for yourself. That's what, 4 vacations if you go 2 weeks at a time. Whichever way you count or measure this, 8 weeks of time freed up to use as you wish is phenomenal. Also, it's just nice to know yourself in a deeper way than is taught at school, or even modern emotional systems don't really cover the personalized presentation of something like procrastination. And so that's what this episode is for. And first, to make the most of the episode, you're going to need to know the house that your south node is in. And let me help you with that. I will put a link in the show notes below where you can input your info, and it will give you this table that says North Node and South Node. It will tell you the signs they're in and the houses too. For this today, you'll need to know the house of your South Node. We're not looking at the sign, because the sign tells us how we perform something, and the house tells us where and what exactly that something is. And you can save the North Node information for another time, because that's to do with your purpose, and there will be another episode on that. So you might be wondering, why or how does this South Node thing determine anything at all? What does it mean in a chart? What does it mean in astrology? And what is it for? And those are common questions often asked, because the South Node is not a physical celestial body. It's not an asteroid. It's not a planet, a meteor, a comet. It's not anything physical. It is a fictitious point, and one that happens to carry immense symbolic weight. So the calculation of the South Node is a meeting point. It's where the orbit of the moon around the Earth, so I just want you to imagine a ball is the Earth and then the moon is circling around it. And imagine that orbit as a line or a halo drawn around the middle of the Earth. And then zooming out to think of the Earth's orbit as it creates its own halo path around the sun. There is a point where these two orbital paths, or halos, I just had you imaginary draw in your mind, there's a point where these two intersect. That intersection is where the lunar nodes, both the north and the south, are found. And it's not a physical object. I'll probably use cover work for this episode, cover artwork, that visualizes this concept. So you can not just imagine the moon orbiting the Earth and the Earth the sun, you can see this point visually. And it helps you understand more how these are not physical objects. You can see that clearly. And then you start to think about these calculated points where the moon's path crosses the sun's path and start to understand how their symbolic meaning echoes through time. So if you imagine one of these points sitting ahead of the Earth along its orbital path, like a forward facing marker almost, and then the other one sits directly behind, and maybe you can really already see where I'm going with this, the one in front symbolizes where you're headed, because that's the direction we are moving in. And so, where you're headed, it determines what you are here to learn and fulfill. It's often said to indicate purpose. And that is the North Node. The other one at the back, the one behind, it symbolizes where you've been, what you already have in terms of skills and naturalness. And that is the South Node. And this episode isn't about the technical stuff, so if you're looking to learn more about the true depths and meanings of the nodes, then I'll drop a link below for you to join at the Horoscope Vault Extra. It contains just more forecasts and educational astrology info too. So for this, we just need to focus on the South Node, the point behind the Earth, the point behind you. And you know what they say about looking backwards, it trips you up. And it can, at the very least, slow you down. There's a whole bunch of cliche sayings about what happens when you look backwards, and they're not all that wrong. And so that backwards lagging South Node and the house that it's in explains the behavior or behaviors that you unconsciously rely on when you're avoiding the more uncomfortable pulls of growth. It's your default setting, it's the path of least resistance, and it's often the thing you're actually very naturally and easily, effortlessly, organically good at. You can sit in the actions of the South Node on autopilot without even really having to think because it feels safe. It is safe, it's familiar, it's validating. And it's where you feel effortlessly competent and maybe even sometimes admired. So when you function in that space, that South Node activity, you feel accomplished because you're already good at it. Like going back to school and taking a 5-year old's exam, which is probably coloring inside the lines, which you can probably do. The South Node is the most achievable success that you can have with almost the least amount of effort. It's not just low hanging fruit, it's picking up the fallen fruit on the floor. But staying in the South Node, staying in the South Node's activities and behaviors for too long creates a kind of spiritual and physically evolutionary stagnation. Yes, obviously it offers comfort, but it does not offer expansion. And to recognize your South Node behavior, it then acts as a personal red flag. Every time you catch yourself slipping into that pattern, whether it's perfectionism or people pleasing, control, detachment, cleaning, organizing, socializing, or some other distraction, it's a signal that you're sidestepping the real work. Having that awareness gives you a moment of choice. Do I stay here where it's easy, or do I redirect my energy towards what actually aligns with who I'm becoming? That moment is where change begins. And it's hard. It's hard because the South Node pattern often looks like something good or productive on the surface. So it can be tricky to tell yourself that you're procrastination because it looks functional. It's also hard because the North Node path, the path you're heading towards, what you're evolving into, usually feels vulnerable because it's new. It's unfamiliar, it's without the guarantee of success because it's fresh, and it requires learning more. And it's not so much the learning part that's challenging, it's maybe more the fear of failing or not doing something right. So, just looking at the relationship between the South Node and procrastination, let's sum this up. The South Node represents the habits, talents, and comfort zones you arrive with. It's the patterns so deeply ingrained that they can feel invisible until you start recognizing how often they lead you off track. Once you start noticing your go to procrastination behaviors, you gain power. So, yeah, maybe it's cleaning, rebudgeting, scrolling, planning, tweaking, emotional processing. All things that might feel necessary in the moment may just well be comfortable distractions. For example, if your South Node is in the fourth house, procrastination might look like organizing your home, cooking, tidying your space instead of doing the thing that actually moves your life forward. And these habits are not bad, but when they're used to kind of accidentally delay your purpose, they become roadblocks disguised as productivity. So, what do you do when you catch yourself in one of these loops? You pause, you name it, and then instead of trying to bulldoze through it with guilt or pressure, you learn to pivot. Identifying the procrastination pattern is only step one, but it's a crucial one. Because once you know what you're not supposed to be doing right now, kind of helps to know what you are supposed to be doing instead. And that's where your North Node comes in. Your North Node gives you the direction. It's that which is unfamiliar but essential. It reveals the kind of actions that stretch you, that grow you, and connect you to a deeper sense of fulfillment. And if you're curious about what to do once you become a pro at spotting your procrastination style, there's a deeper dive episode waiting for you inside the Horoscope Vault Extra. I'll link that episode below, and I will link the subscriber portal too. And that exclusive episode will walk you through how to activate your North Node, looking at what to do once you catch yourself slipping into the patterns that slow you down. And for now, each South Node placement 1 through 12 is time stamped below. Find out your South Node house placement, which number that is, scroll down to yours, and start spotting your patterns in procrastination. So if your South Node is in house number 1, the first house, it's personal focus as a detour. So your procrastination behaviors are things like serial startups, starting a brand new project, or more than one brand new project, instead of finishing the ones that are kind of midway through, procrastinating ever finishing anything. You may change your workspace and set up, you may update your profiles, you could rewrite your goals, you might rewrite lists of to dos over and over again, choosing to rather reorganize your list of duties instead of following through on any of them. And another procrastination behavior is spending time alone. This is particularly referenced if in a couple. So saying, oh, I'm just going for a walk, or I'm going for a run to think. And then you go for a walk and you go for a run and you don't think and you don't decide or determine anything. With the South Node in the first house, you catch the pattern mid action when you realize that you're spending a lot of time doing everything yourself, or tweaking a project but never really progressing with it, redoing your morning routine, and just hyper focusing on your identity. And you just remind yourself that you default to working alone because collaboration feels slower to achievement or it feels vulnerable. You can then time bound the comfort and tell yourself that you can have 5 more minutes to wrap up this thing solo, and then move into more collaborative spaces. And this resets the inner belief that you always have to kind of carry everything alone. And then you reframe what you're avoiding. So if you're avoiding collaboration, if you're avoiding letting someone influence the outcome because of fear that they'll change things too much or that there's a lack of control, The truth is that growth comes through interdependence, not hyper independence. The next step is then to anchor into micro momentum. So, this is the important part to make the change. In this situation, you would progress or step into a collaborative matter. You might share a draft with someone or ask for quick feedback. You might make a call, co work on a video. It's just about picking one small relational action that breaks the self reliant loop. And now that you know the pattern and how to pivot from within it, you can unlock the next step to your North Node. Your identity becomes the most solid you've ever felt, and growth is all about partnership. And if that makes sense to you, then perhaps you're ready for the North Node episode. I'll link that in the show notes below. If your South Node is in the second house, then your procrastination behavior might be to do with over focusing on comfort. You may reorganize your finances. You may regularly check the bank or visit the bank, always doing something at the bank. You might clean your space repeatedly. You might go shopping. Shopping is a second house South Node activity. Or you might just do a whole bunch of cooking. And you're delaying action by convincing yourself that you're not ready yet to do something, whether that's not ready financially, physically, or emotionally. If you're counting your money, consistently checking your bank app, if you're cooking elaborate meals, if you're cleaning the house, if you're comparing prices on two things instead of purchasing the things, if you're browsing Amazon, if you're shopping, or even if you're watching budgeting videos or re budgeting, if you find yourself hoarding items, these second house South Node habit placements require for you to catch the pattern mid action. So, as soon as you're rearranging your stuff again, as soon as you're rechecking something to do with one of your bank accounts, and you're stuck in your resource based bubble, remember that you're defaulting to what feels stable because the unknown feels risky. You then time bound the comfort. You allow yourself to check this budget, check the bank, do the thing for 5 more minutes, and then you can reframe what you're avoiding, telling yourself that you're avoiding taking a risk. And so you can then anchor into a micro momentum and take a small step, a pivot into the North Node by executing a purchase. If there's something that you have been deciding on, you can begin breaking your patterns by pulling the trigger. And as soon as you know the patterns, you can unlock the opposite side and you've mastered your relationship with the material resources and the material experience of the world. And now it's time to explore your power with risks and investments. And if you're ready to know what that looks like, if you have your North Node, house, and sign ready on that chart, then I've put the link in the show notes below to listen to the North Node episode, helping you continue to break patterns and take ownership. If your South Node is in house number 3, your procrastination behaviors are things like reading. You will read and read and read books and blogs and articles and threads and information without really applying any of it. Procrastination might look like writing, but writing kind of the same thing or rewriting the same thing, or going over old emails. That's a good one. You procrastinate by checking emails, cleaning emails, even, or rereading old communication, which could apply to text messages too. Listening to a variety of podcasts in a very binge worthy way could be a sign of procrastination, where you kind of just seem like you're looking for inspiration when the truth is you already have it there. And procrastination is really kind of delegating and outsourcing thinking. So you ask other people what they think before making a decision. You suffer that analysis paralysis and need to hear a lot of different versions. So, with the South Node in the third house, you can catch the pattern mid action. When you're busy clicking between tabs, or you're over researching, or you're rewriting a text message 15 times, and tell yourself that you're defaulting to busy work because using your voice and sharing your opinion feels a little too risky. You time bound the comfort next. You give yourself 5 more minutes to finish the research, to click through tabs, and then tell yourself that you're moving forward with one clear opinion or idea. You reframe what you're avoiding, understanding that committing to a vision is challenging because you're scared that it might be wrong, or you're scared that someone else will disagree. And then you can anchor into micro momentum. So write one paragraph of something that you believe. Share a social media status. Write a single sentence that is your opinion and put it out there publicly. These small stakes lead to a big shift. And when you know the pattern, you unlock the opposite side. You realize that you've learned enough. You've done a lot of inspirational searching and reading and consuming data. And now it's time to use it by teaching, leading, or guiding. And if you do know your North Node house placement and sign placement, that's a great follow on from this episode. I'll link that episode below for you to go and understand what happens next as you move to your North Node of purpose. If your South Node is in house number 4, your procrastination activities are things like deep cleaning the kitchen, the bathroom, the bedroom. And if the house is clean, you'll go deep clean the yard, the car. Cleaning is easy and natural to you, and you are very good at it. Other procrastination behaviors are in this very homely manner. So you might get to baking something elaborate. You might decide on this exquisite dessert or this complicated dinner and make it your mission to get all ingredients necessary and make this masterpiece. If it's not cooking or cleaning, procrastination can look like rearranging furniture and redecorating your space. It can also be journaling about childhood and spending too much time in emotional childhood wounds. And with the South Node in the 4th house, you can catch the pattern mid action when you're tidying and cooking and nesting, and tell yourself that you're defaulting to home tasks because putting yourself out there, out in the world, chasing big dreams feels too exposing. You then time bound the comfort and say, okay, I'll finish this one thing at home, and then I'm going to work on a project or something that makes me visible, even if it's messy. You reframe what you've been avoiding and tell yourself, I'm avoiding being seen, evaluated, or rejected. You reframe this by telling yourself that out there is where opportunity lives. This is especially potent if you feel lack of opportunity in your life with a South Node in the 4th house. But next, you can anchor into micro momentum and do one task in an external way that feels like there are some serious stakes. Post something, send a pitch, submit an idea, completely unpolished. And then when you know this pattern, you can unlock the opposite. You realize that you are safe enough, and now it is about being seen. And if you know your North Node, house, and sign, you can actually learn how to take strategic, visible action by checking out the North Node episode. I'll link to that below. If your South Node is in house number 5, your procrastination behaviors are very artistic. So you may make art, you'll create content, you'll create and produce, and this will all be stuff that you never share or post. You might take films or pictures and photography with multiple takes and then delete them all. You might use your very aesthetic vision to plan some wonderfully elaborate idea without ever executing it. Procrastination is getting lost in romantic daydreaming and texting, and it's about doing things for your own amusement to avoid group feedback. It's personal one on one pleasures. You make mood boards, you flirt just for the fun of the attention, you over edit your work, and it never feels ready for release. And you feel like you're forever waiting for the mood before beginning anything particular. So, with the South Node in the 5th house, you catch the pattern mid action when you're stuck tweaking a passion project or daydreaming about creative success or chasing fun. And remind yourself that you're defaulting into your own little creative world because connecting to a bigger cause can feel overwhelming or even impersonal. You time bound the comfort and say, I'll carry on with this project for 5 more minutes, and then I'll see if I can connect with others who have similar interests as this project. And these actions begin to help you reframe what it is that you're avoiding. So you may be avoiding collaboration and contribution to something bigger than just your own work for your own eyes because you're afraid you'll get lost in the group or ignored. You anchor into micro momentum. You pick a person or a group to share a piece of your work with, or open up a conversation about a similar interest, or maybe even just sending a DM to someone or an email, which opens the door. And once you know the pattern and you unlock the opposite, then you're comfortable with expressing yourself. Now is time to offer that gift to a community. This pivot is where your growth begins, and you can explore the house and sign placement of your North Node of purpose in the episode linked in the show notes below. If your South Node is in house number 6, procrastination behaviors include rewriting your task list for the 4th time, cleaning and organizing something that is already clean and organized. It's being super health conscious and spending a ton of time at the gym, at yoga, in the shower, in a bath, with all of that self care. You might collect health trackers, update productivity apps. You fixate on the perfect routine to get things done instead of doing the routine. You may also get sidetracked, and this is a form of procrastination for you, helping others with their tasks, which takes you away from doing your own. So, the South Node in the 6th house, you catch the pattern mid action when you are redoing your schedule again and again, or you're doing something for someone else. And then you remind yourself that you're defaulting to productivity because slowing down and doing less feels uncomfortable or unsafe. You time bound the comfort and say, okay, I'll finish organizing this for 5 more minutes, and then I'm going to stop and be still without the pressure to do. This helps you reframe what you're avoiding, realizing that you may be avoiding uncertainty and surrender, kind of just being in the moment, because of the lack of control over activities and schedules and habits that determine what happens in life. You anchor into a micro momentum. So you step away from your desk, close a laptop, and you go for a walk, or you breathe, you lie down, take a nap, and you move at a much slower speed. And knowing the pattern helps you unlock the opposite side, your north node. And your nervous system, it doesn't need any more systems. It now needs surrender and trust. And you can discover how to build that spiritual muscle in the North Node episode. If you know your North Node sign and house, I'll link that in the show notes below. If your South Node is in house number 7, procrastination behaviors include planning something with someone, with anyone, instead of doing it alone. This is a relational place to have the South Node, so being around people is natural and easy. So is being in a relationship. So this might look like going from one relationship to another, or one date to another, one coffee meeting to another. You might spend tons of time reviewing old DMs or texts with other people. You may be worried about or fixating on someone else's reaction or feelings. Or you might just rehash relationship issues that you've already processed. The South Node in the 7th house and catching the pattern mid-action, when you're obsessing over what someone else thinks, when you're waiting for somebody else's input, or when you find yourself blending into another person's goals. You tell yourself that you're defaulting to people pleasing, because essentially people pleasing is a procrastination of yours. And you choose that because leading on your own feels either too risky or it feels too selfish. You time bound the comfort, and you'll have a chat with someone for 5 more minutes, or you'll scroll for 5 more minutes, and then you'll act on what you know to be true for you. You reframe what you're avoiding. So you're avoiding taking initiative because you don't want to rock the boat. And then you anchor into the micro momentum. You make one decision today that is just yours without labeling it selfish. And when you know the pattern, you unlock the opposite, and you're not abandoning anyone, you're just returning to yourself. And you can walk through that reconnection fully if you have your North Node house and sign. And I'll link the North Node episode below. If your South Node is in the 8th house, procrastination behaviors for you are just anything where you get lost in some kind of rabbit hole. If there's something that is an obsession, it might be a thing, a project, it might be another person's behavior, then this hyper focus of attention might actually be procrastination. Watching true crime, listening to true crime, reading about conspiracy theories may all serve as procrastination. Imagining what revenge or karma looks like might be procrastination from moving on. Things like astrology and tarot may feature very naturally and easy, so digging deeper into those things to avoid taking action might actually be a form of procrastination. Always being the one to jump in and help other people in their own crisis is an act of procrastination against what is best for you. Excessive detoxes, constantly detoxing, playing detective online, being obsessed with your credit score, opening multiple lines of credit, actually, that's a procrastination too. With the South Node in the 8th house, you catch the pattern mid-action. So you know when you're spiraling deep into processing and over-analyzing something, because it's just the one thing that you can think about. And you remember that you're defaulting to inner intensity because taking grounded action and seeing something as it is can feel too exposed or even too plain and ordinary. You time bound the comfort, so you allow yourself to play detective, to read about the economy, all the way to having sex. Having a lot of sex might actually be some kind of procrastination. Once you've allowed yourself 5 minutes to get lost in the depth of something, it's then about doing something much more physical and practical. And you reframe what you're avoiding. You understand that you're avoiding steady, grounded energy, that you somehow get swept up in emotional intensity. You're avoiding being self reliant. You're avoiding allowing yourself to think about money in terms of what it can buy. And then you anchor into micro momentum. You move away from co ownership or being part of a two, and you build something for yourself. You make a 5 minute money move, you track, save, or earn something somehow. You choose a small financial goal and build towards it consistently. Starting a savings is one of the best ways to anchor that momentum change for the South Node in the eighth house. And once you know that pattern, you unlock the opposite, which is the North Node in the second house. You've done the work and now you can build something. And knowing your North Node, house, and sign placement helps determine what it is you're here to build. I'll link the North Node episode in the show notes below. If your South Node is in house number 9, your procrastination behaviors might be things like planning trips that you won't take, or taking multiple courses of education, including online, instead of practicing with a skill you've already learned. It might be reading or watching spiritual and philosophical content endlessly. It might be writing a book but never publishing. It might be prepping for and feeling excited about a blog or a podcast that you could create but never creating or launching it. With the South Node in the ninth house, you catch the pattern mid action when you're watching another lecture or you're losing yourself in philosophical thoughts. You tell yourself you're defaulting to expansion and ideas because the idea of just starting and starting small, starting local, feels too trivial or too boring. You time bound the comfort, so you let yourself have 5 more minutes to explore the idea, listen to the lecture, and then you focus on what needs to be said or done right now. You reframe what you're avoiding. So if you're avoiding writing, speaking, or showing up clearly because you fear that you'll sound unsure or unpolished, and reframing is remembering that you don't need to be perfect, you just need to be doing. And then you anchor into micro momentum. You say something out loud that you wouldn't usually say out loud. You write a very clear message that needs to be said or sent. Start small, but make sure you start. And knowing the pattern unlocks the opposite, which is the North Node, where you've done the big thinking. Now it's about the small, meaningful action steps and communication. There is an episode on the North Node which will help you know the correct path to speak your truth one sentence at a time. So if you know your North Node, house, and sign, then I'll put the link for that episode below. If your South Node is in house number 10, your procrastination behaviors are things like updating your bio, your portfolio, your social presence, making vision boards, applying for new jobs, going to work, staying extra hours. This is the overtime that isn't just to earn some extra bucks. It's going above and beyond in work when above and beyond doesn't pay back. It's drafting but not submitting applications or pitches, just as much as it's applying for multiple jobs and never accepting any. This is looking at many multiple paths to success, getting inspired by paths to success, but never committing to any. The South Node in the 10th house, you catch the pattern mid action when you are polishing your resume, when you're tracking your performance, when you're comparing sales, comparing your progress to other people. And then you remember that you're defaulting to achievement because achievement is so natural and easy for you. And resting and nesting, being with yourself, feels like you're being unproductive or weak. You time bound the comfort and you say, okay, I'll finish this one work based task and then I'm going to go do something restorative. You reframe what you're avoiding, in that you may be avoiding personal time or emotional experiences, or you're avoiding tending to your inner world because you don't think that there's time for it. But then you can anchor into a micro momentum and pivot. Take off your work hat, take a nap, journal, stay at home, cook. Cook something you really want to eat. Because once you know this pattern and you unlock the opposite in such a way, understanding that you've already been seen by the world and being successful is something you can do with your eyes closed. It's now time to see yourself and prioritize comfort. And all of that is unpacked in the North Node episode. If you know your North Node sign and house, then click the link to that episode below. If your South Node is in house number 11, your procrastination behaviors are things like being deep in group messages. Like you've got all these group messages and you're responding to all of them as well. It's going deep into a forum post, some kind of online discussion that goes on for much longer than it should. You spend time making sure everyone in the group is okay. This is all about reworking a group vision. This is procrastination instead of working solo. You might be obsessively intent on staying up with the current news and information. You might get stuck in future goal planning based on that information so much that when it changes, you find that as a reason to change your goals. Procrastination is when you volunteer and do too many things at once. And with the South Node in the 11th house, it's actually easy for you to do many things at once. But catch the pattern mid action, like when you're scrolling for trends, or when you're lost in group chat, or when you're doing everything for the rest of the group on behalf of the rest of the group. Realize that you're defaulting to crowd based matters like validation and participation because doing things on your own based on your own personal joy feels too self centered. Time bound the comfort and give yourself 5 more minutes to check in socially, and then do something just for you, just for the pleasure. Reframe what you're avoiding, in that you're avoiding putting yourself out there creatively or doing something that's got a very personal signature to it because you don't know how it will land, or you're avoiding doing things for yourself because it feels selfish. But then you anchor into micro momentum and pivot. Dance, write, design, sing, joke, watch comedy, go out, and just do something that is straight up for you. And once you know this pattern, you can unlock the opposite, which is the North Node, and you realize that joy is not an indulgence. It's something you deserve, and it acts as a guide for you. And you can explore how to follow it back to yourself if you know your North Node's house and sign placement in the link in the show notes below. If your South Node is in house number 12, your procrastination behaviors are things like watching movies. This is the binge watching, and it's not even binge watching Netflix, it's 3 movies back to back to back. You procrastinate when you take your second nap of the day because you need to reset. Procrastination can look like escaping into fiction or playing games or dream journaling. This is one placement where meditating might even be a form of procrastination. You ignore your schedule, you ignore maybe even the constraints of time. You might be late a lot and a very untimely person with a complete lack of relationship for punctuality, where not planning and just winging it is a form of procrastination. The South Node in the 12th house, you catch the pattern mid action just before you go down to take that nap. When you are spacing out, when you're lost down the rabbit hole of the meaning of something deep, you realize that you're defaulting to escape because interacting with and building structure feels difficult. It feels mechanical, boring, overwhelming. Then you time bound the comfort and give yourself 5 more minutes to drift or watch. And then you pick one real task and you do it. You reframe what you are avoiding, that you're avoiding structure and repetition, but actually, structure and repetition supports your creativity and growth. And then you anchor into micro momentum. Answer an email. Plan out your next week grocery list. Make a list. Organize your duties and your to-dos. Regularly exercise. Go for a run or do some kind of workout. And once you know this pattern, you unlock the opposite. Your magic gets sharper when you apply more structure. And I walk through how to build sustainable flow for your South Node in the 12th house in the North Node episode. So if you know your North Node house and sign, then that episode is linked below.